In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
Everybody, welcome to Strange Bedfellows. I'm your host, Laurie Spencer, along with Rick Walker of Maverick News. And tonight it's episode 13, episode lucky 13. And man, we feel lucky tonight. I feel lucky. Don't you, Rick Walker? You feeling lucky, punk?
It hasn't been a lucky day so far. We've had a lot of technical issues here, and I have another one right now, but that's okay. I'll work through it on my end. I won't even bother you with the details.
Yeah, we have had a lot of technical issues lately, and we're not sure why, but you know what we do here at Maverick News? When things go wrong, when things go off the rails, we just blame the CIA.
It's their fault. It is.
You know, when my car doesn't start first thing in the morning, I blame the CIA. You know, when the washing machine overflows, I blame the CIA. Why not? Just blame the CIA. I pretty much blame the CIA for everything. Why not?
Yeah.
And I'm joking, I think. I think that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, as a matter of fact, here on the Strange Bedfellows. We have a very special show for you tonight, bringing you a special report, because honestly, the mainstream media is not paying attention to this story, and I think it's abhorrent the way they're ignoring it. We think that this deserves serious coverage, and we endeavor to do our best for you tonight here on Strange Bedfellows with the Maverick News team. And we plan on having a special panel on board, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But to bring you up to speed on the latest developments in this story, as you probably know by now, there was an assassination attempt of sorts. I guess I would classify it that way. I'm not sure if it was an assassination attempt or not. All I can say is it was very strange, a very strange incident. Happened yesterday in Los Angeles, which is where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lives. He lives in the Los Angeles area with his wife, Cheryl Hines, the actress from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And he was in town this week, last night, doing a speech at the Wilshire Ebell Theatre in central Los Angeles, historic theater. Been there since 1927, I think, when it opened. Beautiful place. I've actually been there. It's gorgeous. But there was some trouble last night. There was a gunman, an armed man, and I mean heavily armed, carrying at least a couple of handguns, had a lot of ammunition, had several knives in a backpack, and he was arrested at this event just before RFK Jr.'s speech. And he was pretending to be a federal agent, which is very strange. He told the police that he had been hired by Bobby's security team, his private security team. Gavin Becker and Associates provide security for Robert Kennedy. And it's very, very strange that this man was spotted by the alert men at Gavin Becker's team. They're the ones who said, hey, this guy doesn't look right. And they kind of took him aside. Robert Kennedy posted a tweet, which I will read to you. This was his statement about the incident. He says, I'm very grateful that alert and fast-acting protectors from Gavin Becker and Associates spotted and detained an armed man who attempted to approach me at my Hispanic Heritage speech at the Wilshire Ebell Theatre in Los Angeles tonight. The man, wearing 2 shoulder holsters with loaded pistols and spare ammunition magazines, was carrying a U.S. Marshal badge on a lanyard and a belt clip federal ID. He identified himself as a member of my security detail. Armed Gavin Becker Associates team members moved quickly to isolate and detain the man until LAPD arrived to make the arrest. I'm also grateful to LAPD for its rapid response. And then he adds, I'm still hoping, still entertaining a hope that President Biden will allow me Secret Service protection. Hello, Secret Service, are you listening? I am the first presidential candidate in history to whom the White House has denied a request for protection. And now, of course, there is a viral hashtag going around social media tonight, Protect Bobby, and other hashtags of that nature. And people are tagging the Secret Service on Twitter like crazy, saying, hey, we need to get this guy some protection. And I would encourage you to call the White House if you feel the same way. Tell President Biden to provide this man to dispatch a detail to his side ASAP. Now, Mr. Kennedy's speech was not canceled. It went on as planned last night, went off without a hitch. Huge crowd there at the Wilshire Theatre, and a very enthusiastic crowd. And we'll play you some footage from that speech last night that's very interesting in light of what happened before the speech. Of course, the gunman never got close to him. He was arrested before he could get in close proximity to Mr. Kennedy. And it's ironic because the Wilshire Theatre is about 2 miles from the former location of the Ambassador Hotel, which is also on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. That's where his father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., was assassinated on June 5th, 1968, on the campaign trail after he had just won the California primary. And that's very strange. A shiver goes down my spine just talking about it, and I'm sure it does for you too. Something that's really interesting to me, Rick, I'm sure you've noticed because you work in the news too. You notice how the mainstream media really is just kind of not covering this? I mean, you'll get maybe 30 seconds on the Today Show or a 15-second spot on the evening news, but and it took 12 hours for the national desk at NBC to pick up the story. That was a full 12 hours after it happened. Now, imagine if this had happened, say, at a Trump event or a Biden event. Don't you think they would have been live on the scene, doing lots and lots of coverage for hours and hours? What do you think of that, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, probably. I think that they do try to suppress coverage of RFK Jr. generally. And yeah, I think they are probably trying to ignore it. Now, I mean, we do have to kind of look at it from a variety of perspectives here. We don't know what his intent might have been or might be. I have my own already strong views on what I think has happened here after looking at this. And I think it does deserve more attention. I think it deserves attention in other ways beyond this. I think this guy is a QAnon guy. Probably.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And that's and he has some things in his head that have prompted him to do whatever do what he did, and then beyond that, what he was going to do, we don't really know. Well, you know, you can't charge someone with a pre-crime. He didn't actually pull his weapons out. He didn't threaten anyone. He did, I guess, make an attempt to approach RFK Jr., but there was no actual physical altercation or anything like that. It never got that far, because the security detail intercepted him before he ever got close to him, close enough to do anything like that, which is so that they did their jobs, right? So that's a good thing. But you can see the danger here. And here, I'll bring up this. You look at the tattoos on his hand. I blew that up, enhanced that today. I took a look. I don't know what that is on the top of his hand. I can't quite make that out. Maybe someone has some idea what that might be. But the word
first
free,
word on the top.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Free is on his fingers, and then you've got pride, but I can't make out the word at the top.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Is it white?
Well, that was my first thought. It looks like white
I
pride, but I cannot confirm that.
I can't confirm it either.
It does kind of look like white pride.
Yeah, and free on his fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think he's white.
Well, those look like biker tattoos, and
Yes.
well, his
Did
arrest record says he's a Hispanic male.
yeah.
I'll give you some additional information that I've garnered this afternoon from the Kennedy 24 press office, and Kennedy's press secretary, Stephanie Spear, sent me this. Says that the alleged gunman appeared at a side door of the venue, claiming to be part of Mr. Kennedy's security team. He told RFK Jr.'s actual protectors with urgency that he needed to be taken to the candidate immediately. Observing that the man had a handgun, Kennedy's security team removed him from the area, isolated, surrounded him, and notified the LAPD. Nobody was harmed, as Rick just said. Now, LAPD also took custody of a second man who arrived at this event with the suspect. And it turns out that's the suspect's brother who brought him to the event. Kennedy's security team said that the man seeking access to Mr. Kennedy had a backpack found to contain at least one other handgun, and he had 2 holsters, apparently with guns on him. So this could be 3 guns in all, 2 in holsters on his person and another gun in a backpack. Also, multiple knives and extra ammunition, but they didn't say exactly how much extra ammunition. The security imposter, as they call him, who was wearing sunglasses, appeared to have laid his plans in advance, as he was carrying what appeared to be a U.S. Marshal badge on a lanyard with a belt clip federal ID. The Kennedy campaign is seeking additional information from witnesses who were there, might have seen something, and law enforcement authorities. And again, the suspect's name is Adrian Paul Ispiro.
Have you seen his video?
Yeah, but I'm sure some of our viewers haven't seen it yet. Let's take a look. Is this
Sure.
the arrest video that you have?
Oh, well, they've got that. And did you see this guy's
TikTok.
video on TikTok?
Yeah.
Which one do you want first?
Let's take a look at him being arrested, since we're talking about him being taken into custody. He's 44 years old, and Adrian Paul Ispuro, Aispuro.
Oh, boy. I had it. I've had
Where'd
so
it
much
go?
stuff up. I've got the other one queued.
Sure, either one.
Let's go with that one first. Okay, so this is
really weird.
it is. It's pretty
This is
weird.
mind-bending.
But the scary thing is I understand it.
Yikes!
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I don't. Oh my God.
I don't understand all of it, but I understand much of it, and that's why I think that
A scary feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's
Okay, here
like
we
I
go.
understand this guy.
Just don't tell me you relate to him, Rick.
I don't.
My Lord.
Oh shit, big homie Zorro over here.
Shit, just the puta I needed to see. More like God's gangster.
Shit, I hear you're the man with the plan. What's the word?
I got it all. Actually, there's too much to tell you right now. So I want you guys to go over to Rumble. Check out Icons 2020. Sarge. I will be speaking with him. And Alex Collier. You're not retiring, homie. You didn't fucking ask me, dog. I need you, sport. My name is Adrian Paul Ispuro. First name, Adrian. Middle name, Paul. Last name, Ais, as in Sierra, P as in Paul, Uro. Calculate my full name in gematria and calculate my last name in gematria and do your
Here we
fucking
go.
research on that last name and you'll know who you're fucking with. Alright? I need to speak to the Hells Angels. I need to speak to the Mongols. Contact me at STOIC medic, MEDIC 717@gmail.com. Let's fucking break some kneecaps. Let's go for a ride, dog. let's fuck it up. All right? I'm putting this planet on lockdown. DEFCON 1, regulators mount up, stay-at-home orders effective now. That's what's happening. Take care of each other, protect the women and the children. If I don't make it back, call the fucking president, your commander-in-chief, Donald J. Trump.
What? Huh? Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack. Let's just say there's a lot to unpack there.
Do you want me to explain?
Well, I tell you what, we'll get to it. I just want to catch you up on the latest updates.
Help
first.
us, please.
Because I know you're raring to go, and so am I.
DEFCON 1!
It's DEFCON 1. Whatever.
Planet's on lockdown!
Oh, boy. Jeez. I don't even know if I can get through this, but I've been working this. I've been on the phones today with LAPD. I've been, in contact with the campaign and witnesses who were there. My friend Craig Pasta Jardula, who's been a guest on this show, journalist who's filling in for Jimmy Dore for a couple of weeks over there at the Jimmy Dore show. He's out in LA. He went to the event last night, and he was not there, of course, when this happened. He was already inside the venue, was unaware of it until hours later because the media wasn't reporting it. But he said that security was extra tight last night. Craig travels around, follows Kennedy on the campaign trail, covers a lot of his events. And, the campaign knows him by now. The staff knows he's safe. He's not there to hurt Mr. Kennedy. He's just there with a camera to cover him. And Craig said that last night he didn't get to ask his question and during the Q&A period because security was so tight that they weren't letting anybody close to that stage. They were taking no chances, not even for our friend Pasta. So that was interesting. So there was an interview. Adrian's brother, Raymond, who was briefly detained by the police, gave interviews to the Daily Beast, and he also spoke to the New York Post. And he says that this entire thing is a big misunderstanding and that his brother is unemployed EMT, emergency medical technician, said that he had been told that there was a security job for him there. I'm just going to read a quote from Raymond Aspiro, 38 years old, his younger brother. He told the New York Post that Adrian approached the security guard asking about a point of contact for someone. They didn't know who he was talking about. They told him to stay right there. He did. And the next thing happens, the cops show up and arrest him. Raymond insists that his brother has a clean criminal record, says he's not a stalker, not even a political guy, and has no connection to the federal government.
Of course not.
Of course not. It says, quote, "My brother got bad information from someone or was misled somehow. I really don't think he was there for any other purpose except for work." No. He says that his brother had his gun holstered, never took it out, never displayed any aggression. But in that July 31st TikTok video that we just saw, it was obviously menacing. It was threatening. It was often incoherent. And you can see his gun and his fake Marshal badge prominently on display. Not only that, he wants you to know his name. He even spells it for you, and he tells you how to solve it in gematria, if you're into that sort of thing, the numerology, gematria. But this guy is obviously just not right in the head. I need to speak to the Hells Angels. I need to speak to the Mongols. Those tattoos he has are probably biker tattoos. They do look like biker gang tattoos to me. And he's like, let's break some fucking kneecaps. Let's fuck things up. I'm putting this planet on lockdown. Take care of the women and the children. And, he has his Betsy Ross flag there in the background. Obviously considers himself some kind of patriot. And I did look up he is still in custody. I think earlier there had been some false reports saying that he was already out on bond and that this man was roaming the streets of Los Angeles tonight. He is not. As of last check, I keep checking every couple of hours to see if he's had an arraignment, if he's seen a judge. He has not yet. He is still in custody in the Los Angeles, I guess, the county jail. He was born on August 13th, 1979. 44 years old, Adrian Paul Ispiro. We have a closer look at this. Yeah, he is at I think the Wilshire station. And our guests tonight are both residents of the Los Angeles area, so they can probably tell me exactly where that jail is. Rick, looks like you found the video of him being taken into custody. You want to roll it?
Here we go.
Sure.
Planet's on lockdown.
Officer, we have a bomb dog. You want to just take a look at that bag really quick before you guys get into it?
Yes, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, okay, well, wait.
Just saying. Glad he didn't have a bomb.
Will, find out how long until... Doug. Yeah, yeah.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Wow. This is just so crazy, isn't it? I want to bring in our guests. They've been just like, let me in on this. Let me in on this. It's a real pleasure to have both of you not only here with us tonight, because you're two of the Kennedy assassination historians and researchers that I personally respect the most, but to have you together back here on Maverick News. You've both been guests before. And to have the panel, the old gang back together again, because I know you two have collaborated a lot over the years. I was reading your stuff back in the 90s when you were writing together as a team. And down here on the right, ladies and gentlemen, is our friend Jim Diogenio. I almost tripped over your name. Sorry, Jim.
Good evening.
You'd think I would be able to pronounce it by now.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Jim is the author of many books on the Kennedy assassinations, both JFK, RFK, and MLK as well. And of course, wrote the screenplay for Oliver Stone's new documentary film, JFK Revisited, and Destiny Betrayed, and so many great books. It's a pleasure to have you back, Jim. And we also have down here on the left our friend Lisa Pease, who was just with us a couple of months back. We had her in for an interview on the 55th anniversary of the murder of Robert Kennedy in Los Angeles. Lisa has done what I think is the penultimate book about the assassination conspiracy. It's called A Lie Too Big to Fail. And welcome back to the show, Lisa. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, where do we begin,
I almost
my
went
friends?
to the jail last night to see if I could talk to this guy because I really wanted to see if he was in some sort of a hypnotic trance or something.
I bet you did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And
Let's
like you,
unpack
I've been
this. What do you think?
Yes, I've been
with you.
researching all day, and I know, Rick wants to talk about all the references in there. I went and looked up where he lived. He's from the Valley. It appears he's been living with his mother for several years, possibly due to a medical accident he apparently had that cost him his job as an EMT, which he had been for many years. And according to his brother, and I'm not sure how trustworthy that is or not, I just don't know. I'm not trying to disparage the brother. But according to his brother, he was actually trying to raise money to help his brother because he lost his job after he supposedly rescued somebody. He lifted like a 300-pound man in and tried to help him when no one else was available. And then he hurt his own spine and had huge medical bills, and supposedly the county let him go. Again, don't know if that's true. That's what his brother said on a GoFundMe page that somebody sent me earlier today. He does seem to have a large
He has an active fundraiser right now. Is that GoFundMe still up?
No, somebody sent me, I think, a screenshot, or did I go to the actual? I don't remember now if I went to the actual page. It's not a recent page. It's a very old page, because he apparently stopped working in 2017. You can see in that video he's wearing an EMT shirt, essentially. I even looked up his home address because I found that on Google, and out front was a car with a Support Our Troops yellow sticker and an Air Force sticker and something else. And it seems on his own TikTok page, there's a Marine Corps insignia. I mean, for somebody who wants to like call out the federal government, he seems to have a lot of love for it. It opens with a POW flag for veterans. I mean, here's a guy who fits more the, how do I want to say? Yeah, I mean, it really looks like an intelligence agent. I understand he had some financial troubles from my research. I mean, he would have been an easy target, let's put it that way. If somebody wanted to get a guy like that, living with his mother, no, credible means of support. At one point, he was involved.
What does that sound like?
Really. And then
like?
he listed himself as the owner of something that was like an online travel agency that people did from their homes, but people online were saying that whole thing was a big scam. And so, I don't know, never dealt with that particular agency. I literally only found one article about it, as if, how do I want to say it? If it was some sort of a CIA front company, it would make sense that there would be like one article saying it's legit, nothing else anywhere on Google. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, the way he talks, he positions himself as God's warrior. It's almost like somebody wanted to discredit Trump by having a Trump supporter kill Kennedy. And that way they get rid of
Which makes no sense at the same time. Not a lick of sense.
Well, no, but it didn't make sense that Oswald wanted to kill Kennedy either, right? Or that Sirhan wanted to kill Robert Kennedy, except for the little fake myth they made about him, but he's like, Sirhan at his own trial said, when I saw Kennedy, I thought he was a god. It's like he looked, I loved him. It was so disconnected from what then happened later in the pantry.
And I kind of wonder too about this guy. If he, I mean, he didn't say anything about hating Kennedy. It sounded like it was either showing up because somebody told him they had a job for him.
Well, he did tell his brother that he had a private security job, which he clearly did not have.
And maybe, I guess what I'm saying is maybe he kind of is one of those people who thinks that, God called him to come protect Kennedy and he was there of his own accord because he loved Kennedy. He didn't want to hurt him. Maybe he was like just trying to, jump in there and be one of Kennedy's protectors.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
See, the thing is, I think you guys are from Texas. California, you cannot brandish a weapon in
at
public.
All. No.
Okay. Yeah. And so this guy comes
you can't impersonate a federal officer.
A speech, and he's got 2 guns loaded with ammo and 1 hidden weapon in his backpack. Apparently. I mean, what are you asking to be arrested? That's just so out of this world.
It would have stood out like a sore thumb.
Let me tell you, all the years I've been in California, I see these films of people back east in North Carolina, carrying around it. You will not see anybody, carrying a gun anywhere. And I've been here for over 30 years. Lisa's been here all her life.
Yeah,
I've never seen anybody carrying a gun, open carry. Right. You just don't do it here.
You just don't. You can't.
And this guy says he's applying for a job brandishing these guns.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Just
wacko.
And he's in that video
done some serious damage. In
that video, he's like, I want to talk to the Hells Angels and the Mongols. Well, the Mongols are like so criminal, a gang that they're forbidden from wearing their logo when they bike together. I was just reading about them earlier. It's like, this guy, there's something just completely off. This is not a normal person.
And then he calls Donald Trump our president.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. Check the calendar.
Look at
Do,
Rick's
do,
face.
do you
He
guys
does.
have any idea why?
No, I
Rick,
really,
I think you should
I
come
mean,
in
he
and
is a
explain
Q
why.
follower. Yeah.
I,
he
I'm,
understands?
it scares me, but I understand why.
Okay,
Please
go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead, Rick. I know.
In my estimation, this guy is a QAnon person.
100%.
Okay, so why does he say these things? Well, I can show you, actually. I hate to kind of give people the entrance to the rabbit hole, but you will find it here. I've been studying this stuff. I've been immersed in it, actually, unfortunately, for many months. It starts with things like this, and this is a guy near the top of the information food chain. His name is Derek Johnson. And come on, get up there on the screen. I won't run the video. The information that this gentleman shares with people seems very credible. He cites executive orders by number. He gives you very, I find when I listen to him and then research the information he provides, I find it very difficult, extremely difficult to discredit anything he says.
Okay,
Because
because
he's
the
very
executive
particular.
orders are put online and you can read them.
That's
So if he
right, and
cites
so-
one, you can easily go check that.
Oh, yes, and
Good,
he
yeah.
provides those references, which makes it even more difficult to debunk or discredit anything that he says. Here's, and this is a website that he cites that he actually has created with the relevant links to all of the information that he provides. And as you scroll down, he does provide, these are all links, and it all starts, and it's quite extensive. I won't go into all of it here, but what, in a nutshell, he is, the whole Trump thing, still being president, actually he says, specifically he says he's the commander in chief, because these guys believe right now, the current thinking is that he's not necessarily the president, but he never gave up being commander in chief. And they believe, based on these executive orders that Trump wrote before he left office, that he still retained the powers as commander in chief. And there are executive orders that he uses and references there to support this. Now, it's all laid out right there.
Have you looked at any of those?
I have. I went and I looked. I've looked at a lot of this stuff. So, and as you, but what's really going on, in my view, is one of the most sophisticated. It is the most sophisticated, the most dangerous, psychological psyop going ever, and they are in people's heads, in a en masse. And it has infected people like some mental cancer, a huge tumor that is just, it's gone, it's spreading like wildfire. It's up here in Canada now. It is, it needs attention. I don't know how this can ever be addressed, but there is mass mental illness. And if you learn about this and if you dare to touch it, if you dare to start looking at the stuff, because you can get infected too very, very easily with this. It's so sophisticated. I'm struggling with it myself. I have been for a long time, because you can get sucked down into it, right? But this is what it is, and that's why I recognize it because of what he's saying. The phrases, the words. It's all based on sovereign citizenry, common law. That's why he's making references to the bikers, because that kind of free ideology. We're not really citizens. The government doesn't have any authority over us.
Oh yeah,
all of that ideology, that's woven into the biker culture. It's all of that, and that's why on that tattoo, free on his fingers, immediately I'm like, this guy's like got to be a freeman on the land, or a sovereign citizen. He's with one of these groups, and then you listen to what he says, and it links me right back to that. I get fed this information by people. I'm right in touch with all of what's going on with all of that, and I have.
You know the Sarge character he quoted on the video, he talked about Icon's 2020 Sarge, and I went and looked it up.
Yeah, I'm not really.
Can you explain that, Lisa? What is that?
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a weird combination. He opens with this really cheesy
That
Star
one threw
Trek
me
video.
for a loop. I didn't
Yeah.
understand it. What
and
is
and
that?
it's like he tries to mix New Age spirituality with QAnon and Trump, propaganda, and it's the weirdest mix. Because again, to me, if you're a spiritual person, you couldn't possibly stand Trump. They are completely opposing diametrics there, and so it's just bizarre how this has all been woven together. He opens by calling himself a warrior for God or God's soldier or whatever he said at the start of that video. Who's filming him? Well, it's literally the only video
Probably
on
his brother.
TikTok feed. And it's interesting because I looked at that early on. As soon as somebody put it on my feed, I went right to it. It had like 10 views and no comments. And now it's like up to 66 views and stuff. But it's like he filmed it. He put it up there. There's no other videos.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was planted just for this event.
Exactly.
So that we would find
It
after
reminds
the
me,
fact.
and I have to ask Jim D'Eugenio about this. Doesn't that have a feel like the staged incident of Lee Harvey Oswald on the streets of New Orleans, the staged arrest,
Yes.
and then his interview with WDSU TV before the assassination, where he's just wanting the whole world to know who he is, kind of thing, and
Well,
what do you think?
if he was the only member of the FPCC
That's
in the
right.
whole city.
The New Orleans
Okay.
chapter.
Right. He's the only guy. I mean, who the heck passes out FPCC pamphlets in the city streets of New Orleans? Okay, I mean, so everybody can
The heart
see
of the
it,
South.
and my God, who films people doing that?
And the media just happened to be there with
Right,
cameras
they just
and
happened to be
captured
there.
the whole thing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so this guy, by the way, Lori, when did that go up? That film that you showed?
It's
The
from
video
July.
of TikTok, that was
Yeah,
from
it's
July
from
31st. And it's
In
the only
July?
video on his TikTok channel. Just that one
Okay.
video.
Yep.
In July.
So that
Okay.
tends to indicate he may have been planning this a couple of months in advance.
So 6 weeks
Planning
later,
something.
this happens?
It's
Okay, what a
suspicious as heck.
coincidence.
Yeah.
And it happens to be 2 blocks away from the ambassador.
I mean,
the
2
Well, it's
miles.
more than 2 blocks.
2 miles.
Yeah.
About halfway between where I live and
It's
the
about 2
ambassador.
miles, isn't it, Lisa?
Yeah.
It's about 2
Yeah.
miles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You weren't
Mile
here.
and a half, yeah.
Manny Kang called me last night, and he says, Jim, I'm going to go to this speech with Robert Kennedy down here in the Wilshire district. Do you want to come? And I go, Manny, I've got to drive all the way from the East Valley. I'll never make it in time. And he goes, okay, I understand, but let me tell you one thing. It's 2 miles from the ambassador. That's the last thing he said to me.
Bizarre. That
That's the way
is just
Manny thinks.
bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Lisa, I told them.
I've
I
been
told
to the
Lori-
Wilshire Ebell Theatre and for
Mhm.
political events. It's commonly
Beautiful.
used by Democrats. I saw,
Mhm.
and I'm blanking on her name now, but she was then my congresswoman, and I went to see her speak there. And I've been to a lot of events in these small venues, and they always make me nervous because it is hard to provide adequate security in a small place. In
True.
a bigger place, the stage is much more separated. I freaked out when I heard Kennedy was going to speak at the Humphreys Half Moon Inn in San Diego because I had just been to that hotel and I knew how small that stage was. And it's like you could shoot him from a boat and no one would know where the shot had come from.
Oh, yes, yes. That venue where
Yeah,
the boats
yeah.
can just, cruise right by, and someone could have maybe
Yeah.
pulled off a
But
shot.
I want to go back just briefly. My point is, when somebody already has this kind of mind issue, when they are in need of money, they're real targets for intelligence operatives, and especially if he had any military connections. When I say intelligence operatives, I am not eliminating military intelligence, which is
I
very
have a
good
feeling
at
we're going to
finding
find out he's
lost
probably
souls.
a veteran and maybe a Marine. And wouldn't it be weird if he was a Marine? Because Oswald
Yep.
was a Marine and Thomas Arthur Valley was a Marine. Anyway.
And the Navy was known to do serious mind control programs for decades. And, I believe they are probably still doing them because there's never been any official investigation into their programs. So why would they shut them down voluntarily, especially when they work so well? They wouldn't. I'm sure
Rick,
they're still
Rick.
doing them.
That guy that guy you showed a film of,
Yep.
is he part of QAnon?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Definitely. Definitely. And you know how I can tell for sure?
Mhm.
When he brings up his name, he says that you have to figure it out in gematria. And gematria is like this sacred numerology that QAnon people believe in. And every letter.
So weird.
has
I had to
its
look
own-
it up.
Every letter of his name has a number corresponding to it, and then you figure out the sum of all that. So if anybody out there understands gematria,
I
take the
do.
guy's
I
name
actually
and
went
do
and
the
looked it
math
up.
and figure it out and let
Yeah,
us
let
know.
me clarify.
Yeah.
Jim, you were asking about the guy. Were you referring to the gunman, or are you referring to
no.
the
I'm
Derek
the guy.
Johnson guy?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were asking about
Yeah, Derek
Adrian.
Johnson. He does like online country videos, like music videos. He's quite good, but he's definitely part of the whole Q community, and he posts regularly. And I get his information a lot, and he has risen to prominence within the movement in the last few months. And this narrative that he's spinning up about Trump still being the commander in chief is being embraced, and it's also fueling this belief that these white hats are coming to rescue us from this terrible evil government that we have, which is terrible and evil, but the white hats are coming to rescue us all, and Trump is still really in charge, and he's just waiting for the right moment to reveal it all to the public. And this is so widespread that you're seeing these videos out of Maui talking about Marines going toe to toe with police and arresting cops there and arresting others. And there was supposed to be a Marine who was actually shot and killed in a battle of some kind that took place there, and that's been spreading and being shared. It's really insane, but it's up here in Canada now too. That's how I've really come to sort of identify it. Never really was here years ago, but it is here now, and it is spreading like crazy. Because you know what? We all have to save the children.
Yeah, now it's all about saving the children. But as I'm sure Jim and Lisa are well aware, because they attend all of the JFK assassination research conferences in Dallas and in other parts of the country, in more recent years, there's been this influx of QAnon people showing up to the JFK conferences and spending a lot of money on merch and buying your books. And, a lot of them buy your books, Lisa. They buy your books, Jim. They're really interested. And there's this
Thanks, Lori.
weird.
I wish my book would wake them up.
You know what I mean, though?
Well,
what I'm
see,
saying
well,
is
Lori,
there's this weird fascination that the Q people have with the Kennedys. It's programmed.
It's the
into
original
their
conspiracy theory, and
programming.
it actually is one of the
You wanna see
seeds
an-
that
you
has
wanna see
grown
an
all of this.
example of this? What's
Yes,
her name?
Rick-
Naomi Klein, is that her name? She wrote the
Yeah.
Shock Doctrine.
Yeah.
Have you seen her latest book?
No.
No.
Doppelganger.
What is it?
It's called Doppelganger. Okay, and what she's trying to do in this book is to somehow say that because her doppelganger, she says, is Naomi Wolf. Okay, all right, and because people now they confuse her with her, and she's trying to say that this whole conspiracy culture is destroying America. Okay, and that we have to face up to it. And she's really out there with this now. She attacked Bobby Kennedy about a month ago over in the London, the Observer or something, or the Guardian. She actually said, and by the way, Lisa will know this because there's other people who said this, that he's really going to run as a Republican. He's really part of the GOP, again, which is complete crap.
That's so.
Okay, but that's what this whole movement is. The MSM is manipulating the QAnon stuff to go after legitimate people who really do believe in real conspiracies. Okay, that's
Exactly.
what they're trying to do.
Like JFK, like RFK.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
right.
I mean, the
So they're
Kennedy
trying to
assassination
tar
people, you guys
everybody.
know better than anyone how
Right.
pernicious and dangerous this
Yeah.
movement is. And right here on Maverick News, I've spent the better part of the last year. I'm constantly trying to educate our audience. Many of them believe in QAnon, they believe this stuff. And I've tried my best to educate them and tell them that no, JFK Jr. is really dead. His wife and Lauren Bissett are really dead. They really died in a plane crash. I knew JFK Jr. JFK Jr. was a personal friend of mine. I can confirm, okay, from firsthand experience, he is truly quite dead.
Tell that to the person who sent me a video 2 days ago that shows that JFK Jr. is coming back to be president.
Oh, sure.
My God.
2 days ago.
It's going to
I
be
was
Donald
going to
Trump's
say,
running mate, right? Again.
I did research for a screenplay I was writing in 2005. So we're talking how many years ago? It's like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the video technology to simulate real people, to put words in their mouth and not have it look fake, it was so sophisticated. In 2005, they could literally take a famous person, have them speak a different language, and tell jokes in that language with the video manipulation.
The deep fake.
So, first of all, in the video of JFK Jr., has he aged? Or is he still the young, handsome dude he was when he died? You know?
Frozen in time.
60s, right? You know? It's like, come on. People are just not critical thinkers when it comes to this stuff.
Oh, but the people who embrace this stuff think they are the critical thinkers.
Right, and we're the dummies because we
mean,
just don't know
yeah,
the
they're
truth.
not.
You don't know the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I run into this all the time because, you know, people coming up to me with their crazy conspiracy theory. It's like, I work really hard to prove the conspiracies
real
that
conspiracy.
I talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually research. I don't sit around and come up with cool ideas or listen to some anonymous person on the internet or believe some anonymous email that a friend forwarded. I mean, this does not rise to the
and
standard
Jim
of
and me,
evidence.
we go to primary source documents. You go to the files at the LAPD, and that brings me back to our topic, which is this current assassination attempt on Kennedy and the real stuff, not the Q stuff, but the real information that we have. And something I found very interesting about the case, Lisa, and I wanted to ask you about this. When I spoke to LAPD, when I talked to their public information officer today, I said, so who's handling the investigation? They said that, you know, FBI was there at the scene yesterday. Apparently they for whatever reason, they had some FBI people at this event who offered to assist the LAPD, but the LAPD says that they don't want the FBI's help, that it's not a federal crime, and that they will handle the investigation themselves. And I knew you would go off when you heard that because you've been researching the LAPD's work on the RFK Sr. case now for 30 years, and you know how many secrets they held and how poorly and shoddily and corrupt that investigation really was. So I hope they do a better job this time, Lisa.
The low-level FBI guys do a fantastic job. And I know Jim will back me up on that. At the lowest level, we got tons of great information on the Kennedy assassination. Now, the higher up the chain it goes, the bigger the lies. But at the ground level, you know, the witness reports and stuff were pretty darn good. And the same in the in the RFK assassination. In fact, I had the LAPD's narration or rather transcript of Sirhan being held for 4 hours overnight. It was all transcribed. The FBI also transcribed it from the same tape. Their version had better detail. The LAP just glossed over certain things. So if I had to choose which agency, you know, and here's the thing, if there's nothing to cover up, they would share and there would be no jurisdictional issues. So the fact that they don't want to share is automatically a red flag that possibly they feel the need to find out more and cover it up. You know, if this guy is somehow tied, you know, who called him and said he had a job? Maybe he really thought he did have a job.
Exactly.
You know, it's like
Exactly.
we don't know the facts of the case. This may not be a crazy guy lying to his brother. This may be a guy taking advantage of who everybody knew would be easy to discredit because he was obviously a Q supporter.
And here's
And
what I don't understand is why so far he's only been charged with gun charges, but there's been no federal charge yet. Now, of course, impersonating a federal marshal is a crime.
Yeah, it was, right. I thought that was one of the reasons.
It's a crime, but he has not been charged with it yet. Now, of course, he has not been to court. Yeah, really. They've only got him on a gun charge right now. Bail is at $35,000. He's still in custody, but it's the weekend. Let's remember that there's probably no court on the weekend. It'll probably be Monday before he sees a judge. They're not going to let him out this weekend, I don't think. And I would think that, you know, the federal prosecutors and in fact the FBI should probably be involved in the investigation to see if he really was, you know, I mean, even if it's a fake badge, if you're impersonating a Fed, that's a felony, a very serious federal felony. And he should be charged with that. And I don't understand.
And I think
why he
that might
been
be why
yet.
the FBI wanted in on the investigation.
Exactly.
You know, for all we know, he has a history of this. You know, for all we
Could
know,
be.
we just don't know.
Well, you know how widespread the problem here is with this gigantic, sophisticated psyop? Have you read the comments on the arrest video?
No.
Probably 3/4 of the people, or at least half, don't believe that it's real.
Oh, God.
Yep. Yeah.
And they don't believe it really happened at all?
They think that it's staged. A variety of comments, but you know that it didn't happen, or this guy's a wide range of conspiracy theory.
Oh my God!
That's not even. It's all staged. He's a Fed. On and on and on.
Yeah, I was going to say I found that with kind of the hardcore right doesn't ever want to believe they've done anything bad. So it's always a Fed impersonating them
every
when
time
one of their own does something bad.
Yep.
And so it's like, I'm sorry, guys, but hey, there are people on the right who do really crazy things. People on the left too, but much less because crazy leftists tend to be super peace-loving tree huggers, and they're not into violence the way the hardcore right is. It's just a complete.
I don't know. I've seen an awful lot of BLM. Mostly peaceful protests with buildings burning down in the background.
I've never seen a BLM activist ever charged with any of that. There are infiltrators in all these.
Yeah, I know. I've seen them running through car dealerships that are on fire at the time, dancing on the cars, but not actually charged. I've seen that.
Well, but again,
I see the crazy on both sides. I see the nut bars all around.
Rick, you sound like Q yourself now. Come on.
It's hard.
Do you want me to pull the videos up because they're online?
Well, then let's not get sidetracked.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I'm not on anybody's side.
Let's try to stay on topic because there's a lot to talk about.
All right. But I just think
that if you see a black person, you can't assume they're a BLM activist.
Oh well, that's true. I'll give you that.
Yes.
And we can't assume that this guy's a QAnon guy either. We haven't proven that. No. So, he's innocent until proven guilty. He's entitled to due process.
QAnon is not a crime. It's just mental illness.
No, it's just crazy.
It's we don't charge people with thought crimes. Let's calm down, everybody. Calm down. Let's get back to the topic at hand. And I'm going to go to Jim D'Eugenio. Jim, you have some thoughts?
Thank you. See, the problem I have is, what I talked about earlier. If you're trying to apply for a job with the security services, why would you arrive with that kind of getup on? Okay,
I know it.
In Los Angeles, California,
it wasn't applying.
I mean, why would you do that?
You think he was an actor on a movie set dressed up like a cop on a, like he's making a movie. He's an extra or something. That was a goofy costume and not very convincing.
And then what was that? What was that decal he had on his sweatshirt? What did that say?
That was emergency medical technician because he was an EMT.
Okay, that's what it is. Oh, that's what he used to be, right?
He hasn't been. Right, but he hasn't been since 2017. And according to his brother, he, in trying to rescue somebody, severely injured his own self, had like 5 spinal cracks, needed very expensive surgery, that might have led to his financial troubles. And like I said, at that point, he's really easy pickings for anybody who wants to manipulate somebody who's a little desperate.
Mm-hmm. That's usually how they get them.
Yep.
That's how they bring them in.
So if you want to go down that path, we just can't
his
prove
TikTok,
that.
his handle on TikTok is kind of interesting. It's Stoic Medic 717. That's STOIC MEDIC 717. If you want to go check out that channel, look at the weird comments. You'll notice it's the only video there is. And of course, his handle in itself has that gematria shit going on that only Q people understand. So, while being QAnon is certainly not a crime, it's obvious to me as I studied too much of this stuff for my own good that he's a QAnon person. And they all talk in gematria. There's this guy.
I wanted to talk about gematria. Yeah.
Well, there's this guy who goes by the handle of -48. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
His name is Jim Protzman, and he's a big leader in the QAnon movement. He's the guy who organized that big group of Q people to go to Dallas last November, and they camped out. They camped out in Dealey Plaza for like 3 months every single day, and they stayed at the Hyatt Regency downtown, the big skyscraper that looks like a giant microphone in downtown Dallas, right by Dealey Plaza. And they would go down to the plaza every day, and there was about 100 of them. And for 3 months, guys, and they would chant. They would sit in Dealey Plaza and they would chant. And
it takes a lot of money.
And they were like, and it takes a lot of money to do that. That's right. These people have money. And so they would take their money and people would donate to them on the internet. People would send in donations. A lot of the members of the JFK QAnon cult who funded this trip, they were staying in the penthouse suite, the top floor, and that's like at least a $600 a night hotel. The leader, Jim Protzman, was bilking his followers out of this money. But the reason I bring it up is Protzman is the guy who teaches his flock, and he has quite a large flock, that JFK Jr. is not dead, that President Kennedy did not die in Dallas, that he's still alive at age 105, 106, whatever he'd be now, and that he's going to come back, and they're all going to come around Donald Trump. And then get this, there's a new twist, guys. Now that RFK Jr. is in the race, I don't know if you've heard the latest QAnon conspiracy theory, but it's that RFK Jr. is not really RFK Jr. He's actually JFK Jr. wearing an RFK Jr. mask, and he took RFK's identity, and so then he's going to, bear with me, I'm almost
make the crazy stop.
Stop me if you've heard this, but he's going to drop out of the Democratic primary, and then he's going to rip off his mask, reveal himself as JFK Jr., who really didn't die in that plane crash back in 1999. And he's going to run as Donald Trump's running mate in 2024. And then the Q prophecy will be fulfilled. It's the craziest thing Lori, I've ever heard.
This does not sound
God.
Again.
They really believe it.
This is not just crazy. This is not just crazy. This is
I'm getting a headache.
Intelligence operative driven.
It's
mind
programming,
control.
isn't it,
That's
Lisa?
mind control. It is, and there's big money behind it, because that group, I'm sorry, even if they're raising money from their their followers who aren't themselves that rich, there's just no way you can stay at the Hyatt for 3 months without federal funding behind you. Seriously, I don't buy that for a second. By the way, I noticed he died on June 30th, Michael Protzman. So
he did?
He's no longer the leader of this. Yep, at least
you're kidding me. I did not know that.
Right now, yep, in a motorcycle accident, suffering multiple blunt force injuries, dirt bike accident, driving a dirt bike at a motocross track. Yeah, when he died. Yeah.
Where was this?
Or did he? In the week since his passing, the QAnon members have refused to accept his death. And claimed the whole tragedy was a hoax. Well, yeah, the intelligence operative, his job was done. He was there to help discredit the Kennedy researchers by bringing in a bunch of crazies, bringing the crazy element. I was there one year when we were on the plaza. Jim, you might remember this. There was like a woman or a guy with a parrot, and I mean, it was just like making it a 3-ring circus. And I saw a news crew go up to film them. I'm like, you got 400 like real researchers here, and you're going to film the crazy parrot guy?
Right.
And she
Of
said,
course
"Don't tell me
they
how
are.
to do the news." And I said, "Don't call it news." Because it wasn't. This was not. It was the whole point of the report was to make all the legitimate researchers look like crazy conspiracy theorists. And honestly, I really think that's what the Q movement is all about. It's to discredit the notion of conspiracy theorizing. And this happened under Obama. Remember, what is his name? Adrian Vermeule. And he had a partner.
Oh.
The other
yeah.
guy. They co-wrote a paper, How to Combat Conspiracy Theorists. And it's like cognitive infiltration. And they're like, go to the groups.
Right,
where
that's
you're
what they
discussing.
called it.
Cognitive infiltration.
And what's hilarious is the whole point of the paper is like to discredit the notion of conspiracy theories, and yet they're proposing an actual conspiracy of cognitive infiltration.
And that's and Lisa, that's Samantha Power's husband.
Get out.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's Samantha Power's husband. Okay, one of those two guys, I don't know which
Cass
one.
Sunstein. Yeah, Cass Sunstein.
So what is it that they propose, or what do they suggest you do or should be done as part of that process?
They're saying, interestingly enough, they say in general, true conspiracies should not be intermined. And so, of course, then my question is, except for which ones? Like the assassination, for example. But no, they literally said they should send people into news groups, put people on social media, go to where people are discussing conspiracy theories, and try to, bring them out of that conspiracy theory. And I think what they found is that probably didn't work. So now they've taken the opposite turn, make the conspiracy bigger and crazier.
That's right.
And because
that's what they're doing.
The truth wasn't working. So now they're going to suck them so dark and deep that nothing will make sense to anybody.
Remember, Lori, we had that discussion, and I said, "How do you get oil off an engine? You pour more oil on it." That's what they do.
That's exactly what's going on.
That's what That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't try to save the people. They make it worse. They add to it. They build it more, and then use it.
The news people to stay even further, especially when you have credible things like Jim DiEugenio's Oliver Stone project on the JFK assassination, JFK Revisited. When you dump all this JFK Jr. stuff is alive and you run those stories side by side, it's easy for people to say, well, I don't think I'll go see that Stone conspiracy theory film, even though, as Jim will tell you, a lot of people did.
Good point.
By the way, that's exactly what Steve Gallon did. Okay. He actually wrote a column for the Washington Post. Lori knows who this guy is.
He's a professor right here at the University of Oklahoma, my alma mater.
He tried to compare the JFK stuff with QAnon. And this is, and the Washington Post loves this stuff. Okay. And so they went ahead and printed that column. Now, you want to hear something else about Gallon? When he decided to bring a debate on TV, which I saw, you can see it on YouTube.
Is that the History Channel debate about LBJ?
No. This is about the Kennedy assassination. He said, he brought on Gus Russo and David Lifton. Those are the two people that he brought on. Okay. And and I said, Steve, now come on. You really think we're this dumb? Okay.
Unreal.
I mean, who gives you a choice
between Gus Russo
and David Lifton?
Wow. David Lifton, by the way, was a huge friend of James Phelan, who was one of the journalists leading the charge against Garrison. And Phelan was so close with Robert Mayhew that he was copying Garrison's files in Las Vegas at Robert Mayhew's offices.
At his office, right.
It's like Mayhew is in the loop of both cases, the JFK and the RFK assassination.
There's overlap there.
Super interesting. Yeah.
There's so many connections to Los Angeles in both the JFK and the RFK cases, and something I wanted to address tonight while I have both of you here, is, there were, and we've been talking about it a lot since the news broke of this potential attempt on RFK Jr. last night, was, we were talking about guys like Thomas Arthur Valley, and some of the other dry runs or assassination plots that were foiled before Dallas in November. There was the Chicago plot, there were the plots in Florida, and there was also a plot in Los Angeles. And I was wondering if Jim or Lisa, if either one of you would like to explain that a little bit, the dry runs.
The one in Los Angeles, that was investigated by Richard Case Nagel.
Yes.
Okay, when he was trying to track down the real assassination that he knew was happening, he discovered this one in LA that was supposed to take place, I believe, on the night PT 109 was going to premiere at this movie theater.
Wasn't it the theater on Wilshire? I think it was a theater on Wilshire.
Probably. Well, to be fair, everything's on Wilshire.
The guy who they were going to frame, for that one, just happened to be a member of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. It's almost like you have to be a member of this committee if we're going to consider you a suspect. Okay.
Well, they were trying to.
That means you had to be a communist. Of course, we're going to blame a communist for it.
Right. Just like we suspect this guy was set up in part to frame Q. Oswald was set up in part to frame Castro supporters and to blame them for the assassination and make supporting Castro so distasteful, or supporting Russia, so distasteful because they killed the president. Right. So this is a standard template that we're seeing. It's hard to ignore that.
Yes.
By the
and
way,
when he mentioned Donald Trump
was
by
Vaughn
name.
Marlowe.
Vaughn
If anybody's listening and wants to look it up, his name was Vaughn. We're not making this stuff up. It's true. His name was Vaughn Marlowe.
I think he lived in Long Beach. There's some Long Beach connection to that. I don't remember the details.
Well, it's all about those planting of psychological seeds. And I'm sure you guys noticed in this strange TikTok video that Mr. Adrian made, that he plants not only his name, spells it for you, all three names. He wants to know his middle name too. He gives you his full name. He tells you to look it up in gematria, and he drops the name of Donald Trump as the real president of the United States. Now, to me, that just smells like a setup. That makes all my spidey senses tingle. That they're trying to set up the MAGA people or Trump and somehow blame them for this, which politically makes no sense, because I'm down here in Oklahoma, flyover country. I know a lot of Trump supporters, and guess what? They all love Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Republicans think he's great. They like a lot of what he says. They might not agree with everything, but I just cannot see any Republican or MAGA person wanting to ever hurt Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I fear that whatever violence may come his way is going to come from the left, because there are some really fanatic leftists.
This is something I wanted to actually talk about, because, and I think everybody here is aware of this, there has been a massive, and I mean massive, effort to marginalize Bobby Kennedy Jr.
and
by the
smear him,
MSM and the establishment,
defame
and
him.
most lately the DNC. The DNC is worse on this case than they were with Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's saying something.
Yeah. So,
No
I
joke.
mean, if there was going to be something, I would have expected to be from the extreme left. Okay. That's what I would expect it from, because everybody's had this drummed into them,
But
That's why you can't assume that he was there to do harm. Just because he showed up, right?
Exactly right.
We don't know what his intent
He might have
is.
just been crazy.
either way,
Yeah.
if it were an intelligence operation, whether he was witting or unwitting, whether he was manipulated or a volunteer, either way, it's clear the point was to discredit Q and Trump, and to threaten, Kennedy's
And scare
life.
the hell out of everybody on Kennedy's team.
In his mind, he might have been there to protect RFK Jr. We don't know.
Exactly.
We don't know.
We
Yeah.
don't know,
Rick.
but I doubt.
Rick,
Yeah.
it's,
I
it's-
mean, Yeah.
Rick, is that the only video of this guy before?
No, there's
that
one
guy?
other.
Which guy?
Oh, that
The
one.
guy who's accused of trying to take a shot at Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah, that's the only one that I was able
That's
to
the
find.
only one?
Yeah.
It's the only one
On his
Oh.
TikTok, Jim. It was his own TikTok, and it was the only one. He even gives out his own email address. You know, might as well as giving his phone number out. I mean,
home
he
address.
put that up there for a reason. But like I said, the whole thing just smells like either he's a Fed or the intelligence agency
He looks
set him
like a
up,
Fed.
or
He does.
he's some sort of a mind control victim.
Well, I think that he gave that information about his name out because they have this pseudo law based in sovereign citizenry and common law where they use this legal lingo and everything is based on, their name, and they're just a man or a woman of the land, and they're the Constitution, the sovereign government isn't sovereign. It's not a legitimate government. And so they state their name in a particular way because they think that gives them some declaration of immunity to prosecution for whatever it is they're about to do. And it just goes on and on and on, right? So
you're saying this is all part of the whole QAnon rights. Okay, their beliefs.
And
their
QAnon,
foundational-
yes, and QAnon is sort of like the most prominent, most visible, it's the foundation of this whole movement, but it goes far beyond that to the point where many people who are immersed in this culture, this ideology, this psyop, don't realize they're part of it. And what weaves its way into politics at various levels and activism. And really what I'm seeing is it is just designed to disrupt, to create chaos, anarchy, to get people out into the streets. This is the method that they use, I believe, to fuel color revolutions in other countries. And I think that it is being done on that scale right now in my country, in Canada. It's at a certain level. It hasn't erupted to that point, but this is ongoing. And I'm seeing it, and it's very disturbing. I think it's even being done in the U.S. as well, but especially here in Canada, and I'm really, really worried about it.
Yeah, you should be, because it's probably my tax dollars paying for that, unfortunately.
And yours,
Well,
Rick.
frankly,
You're paying for it.
The CI can print its own money, which they
Yeah.
have. They have counterfeit operations, and they have their own black funding. So maybe my tax dollars aren't contributing after all.
And you see, it's hard to identify or even convince people that they're involved or they've been sucked into the rabbit hole in a negative way, because there are always seeds of truth. And then they wrap it up in these more elaborate scenarios and ideas that once people start going down that road, it becomes a mass psychosis, and you become part of the community, and you dare not challenge it because the people around you will become they'll push back hard, and you'll feel like you're going to be excommunicated, right? And it becomes almost well, you don't want to, and once you're part of that community, you become isolated as well, so that you become isolated from your family, from your old friends. Now your whole existence, your support mechanisms, everything is wrapped up in that community. So you don't dare say anything negative about it or challenge anything that you're being told. Once the narrative is set, you have to go with that, or you'll be called out and say, no, you're not a true whatever, and you get out of here. So you risk being excommunicated. Then you have nothing.
Rick,
you have nobody
I'll
left
tell you
anymore.
why. It's
Yeah.
because it's not a community. It is a cult. And in a cult, when you try to leave the cult or think independently of
That's
the
right.
cult, the cult attacks you.
That's
you
right.
see?
Right.
And if you try to wake them up to reality and
That's right.
bring them a pot of coffee and say, hey, wake up
exactly
and smell
right.
the coffee, they say, no, you're evil. You're the devil. You're possessed of Satan. I mean,
Right. You're a federal agent. Yeah,
you're fed, you're bad, that's a cult. That's not a community. They may
That's right.
call themselves a community, but
Yeah.
that's not a community. That's a
And
cult.
but once you're in there, what I'm seeing is that you lose touch with your family, your other friends.
Oh,
you And because people are like, they don't want anything to do with you anymore. They don't understand you. You have no way to connect with the rest of the world anymore. You're only there. So you're petrified. You dare not challenge it. You just go with it.
Well, that guy didn't seem scared.
No, because he's just rolling with it, right?
He's a warrior,
he's
Rick.
into it. He's
a warrior.
He believes.
He's
That's
not afraid
right.
of anybody. Look at him. He's a warrior. Just like
That's
a lot of these guys fancy themselves warriors. They're going to save the children. They're going to save.
Yeah.
He's going to go in there and save Robert Kennedy with 3 guns and a backpack full of knives and
That's right.
a bunch of ammunition.
Yeah.
It's going to be mostly peaceful, but he's going to save Robert Kennedy's life, I guess.
So-
Did he say that? I mean, I don't even know where that line.
That's what
came
his
from.
brother
I have
said.
not seen that
He didn't
in
say
any-
a
that's
word.
what
Now,
his-
I thought that was
No,
interesting.
his brother said only. I thought his brother said only that he
He was there for a
told him
job.
he had a security job. He
Right.
didn't say because I want to protect him.
No,
This
nothing
is
of
a
that
guy
sort.
who's out of work. No, this is
Right.
a guy who's out of work. He needs a
So-
job.
and he
So
says he's not even political.
Don't read into it. That
He claimed his brother was
We
not
don't know.
political, but
We
his
don't know.
brother
You
made a
don't know what you
video
don't
that was
know.
very political.
Very
So
political,
that was a
yeah.
contradiction. His brother told the New York Post, "Oh, my brother's not political."
Which is
But
why.
in that video he made, he was very political, and he called Donald Trump the president. I'd say that's a political video. So there's the first lie that we've just caught his brother in right there.
But again,
Um,
Sirhan was never political, until he had his accident off the horse.
Mhm.
And then he got more political because he was being programmed
That's
to
right.
be political and to respond to political cues. And so
Mhm.
again, we can't rule out the aspect that this guy has been individually programmed, not just mass programmed.
That's a great point, Lisa, and I can see why you latched onto that story about the suspect being injured, and that's why he was unable to work and became disabled, because that must have called up
Right.
in your mind.
And had to move back in
how-
with his mother because he had lived
Just like
independently.
Sirhan.
And then
And I'm taking a
That's
beating
true.
in the chat right now on my channels.
Well, you started it. You had to bring it up.
I hope over BLM. Like I said, not every black person who's a BLM activist, please. Yes.
But
Don't blame
Lisa,
the
I wanted
activists
to
for the
dig
things
a
other
little
people-
bit deeper on the programming aspect of all this, because like you, my first thought when I started finding out about this suspect, Adrian, and I started looking at his videos and looking at what he's written on his comments on Rumble. He's left some comments on Rumble videos that are very, they're QAnon videos, and he's left some disturbing comments. But of course, it sounds like
what?
he's been deeply programmed to me. And I wanted to know if that's what your initial take on this guy is that he's deeply, deeply
I
programmed.
suspect it, but obviously I need more data because I don't like to theorize too broadly about things when, the story is fresh. But I think it's an area we should absolutely look into. I looked into who his associates was, and one of them looked like lived a few blocks from Hank Greenspun in Las Vegas. And I'm like, because it said Las Vegas Sun, formerly at this address or something. I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Just
Hank
somebody
Greenspun-
commenting in my chat here, I have to address this because somebody is saying, is Rick connecting? Yeah, is Rick linking the Q stuff with the Million March to save the children? That's really stretching it. Well, I've said nothing about the Million Person March coming up on the 20th of this month, Wednesday. I believe 77 locations across Canada will be involved in this Save the Children March coming up, where they say it's the Million Person March. It's all about saving the children. I've said nothing
Who
about
was
connecting
that?
that to Q. Whoever said that in the chat, they're the one kind of making that connection. So you can do that if you want. I never said anything about it, but I do know this. I do know that at the very center, at the extreme core, at the very beginning, at the foundation of everything to do with Q, it's all about save the children. The whole thing with Q is about saving the children, always has been. That all goes back to Alex Jones and Pizzagate and children in cages and tunnels through the earth and adrenochrome and all of those things. and you guys can make your own determinations on how valid any of that stuff is for yourselves. I didn't make any link between what I'm talking about and that million-person march, but they're using the same hashtag Save the Children, which has been an issue, for the Save the Children charity for a long time.
Yes.
Since about 2015, 2016. But that's at the very center of the Q movement. Now, I didn't make any links there. Other people, you can make the link if you want. You could, that's a rabbit hole you can go down. But don't accuse me. I didn't say it. I didn't say that.
Trolls. You're feeding the trolls. Don't feed
I didn't say. No, I'm not arguing. No. But this is at the core of everything. And this all relates to what went on in Los Angeles. I'm just sharing it with you. This is at the center of the whole thing.
Well, speaking of
because who doesn't want to save children, right?
Well,
I mean, that's
of course.
Everybody wants to keep the children safe,
exactly.
of course.
Yeah.
But getting back to the topic, because we've gone way down the rabbit hole. Getting back to the topic of what happened yesterday in Los Angeles, John McCarthy here in the chat brings up an excellent point that the news was broken by one news outlet, and that was the Epic Times. They're the ones who originally had the story about this incident that occurred and this guy being arrested. They had the exclusive photographs first. And of course, when I saw that, when it came across the wire last night, I was immediately skeptical, like John McCarthy points out. Epic Times, I wanted to confirm it from a better source because Epic
I
Times
gotta talk to you about this group.
Some intelligence connections there. And I thought, were they placed there by happenstance? I mean, they have been following Kennedy and covering a lot of his events. And so they had a legitimate reason to be there as the press. But at the same time, and I'll get to you in just a moment, Lisa, but they were there, first on the scene with the cameras. And of course, I immediately thought of Oswald in New Orleans. And I thought, isn't that interesting that one news outlet was there? Because this happened in the afternoon, long before, before the event began. This happened kind of earlier in the day when the media was not milling around. So they got the exclusive. And so immediately I had to call and double check it with LAPD and with the campaign to make sure that this was legit. And yes, the Epic Times reporting did turn out to be entirely accurate. But I have to admit that at first I was skeptical too. I mean, that's my job as a journalist, is to immediately be skeptical of any information I get, even if it's another news outlet reporting it. I want to check that with 2 or 3 more sources before I would report that story. And so once I was able to confirm that with LAPD and the campaign, then I went with the story. And it just so happens they were there. I'm not saying that anything sketchy or sinister was going on, but I'm, the Epic Times does have some interesting connections. Let's put it that way. Did you have some thoughts on that, Lisa?
Yeah, because when the Epic Times first started, the first publication of theirs I ever saw, this is an intelligence operation, alarm bells went off. And they're fairly young. I mean, they've only been around like a couple of years. They now have it's in every language. Now, legitimate media, you can't scale that fast. There's just no way. Jim and I know, we ran a magazine for years. It's really hard, especially if you're talking, about the kinds of stories that the Epic Times is talking about, to scale on the level they have. And I have met other journalists at other similar publications in the past who ended up being spooks. So it wouldn't surprise me. And of course, the other spook outlet that reported, the first one I think to break his name, was the Daily Beast, after the Epoch Times. But the Daily Beast is the one that hired Gerald Posner, who wrote all that crap about the JFK assassination that was disproved over the years. And then he was, charged with plagiarism. And it's a place where they can hang their CI assets between gigs, and let them write for that paper. There's
isn't the Epic Times funded out of China? That's where I think a lot of their money comes
Taiwan.
from.
Well,
They're connected to the Falun Gong.
To what?
which is
Yeah, well,
anti-China. They've always been anti-communist, anti-China.
Okay. The
yeah.
Daily
And they've
Beast.
been targeted by the Chinese Communist Party, they say. So yeah,
So
The
makes sense.
Daily Beast was brought to fruition by Tina Brown, who was Harold Evans's wife. Okay, and Harold Evans, when he was at Random House, teamed with Bob Loomis, and they're the ones that brought out Case Closed. And they bought an infamous 2-week New York Times half-a-page ad, okay, to promote Posner's work. All right. And then Posner's job, she hired him. Tina Brown then hired Posner until she had to fire him because he committed plagiarism so many obvious times that she had to get rid of him. Okay. You know, so those are two sources for you. All right.
yeah.
You know,
So when
Rick,
they're the ones running with these stories, you just have to wonder. Yeah.
I was going to ask Rick Walker if you could help me roll a video on your end, because my internet's acting a little funny tonight. If your internet's steady up there in Canada, for some reason their internet's better in Canada. I can't figure out why you guys have better internet.
The
The
NSA
long arm of the
doesn't-
CIA doesn't reach that
Don't
far.
say it, Lisa.
I want to show you guys some footage of, something good that happened last night. The speech that Kennedy gave went off really well. The place was packed. Nobody knew, of course, about this assassination attempt or this weird incident until after the event. So everyone was blissfully unaware, had a wonderful time. And the only one who knew, of course, was Mr. Kennedy and his staff. And they did not say anything about it specifically, probably because they didn't want to alarm the crowd and the people who were there unduly, since there was no immediate threat. They just decided not to talk about it. But he gave, about an hour's worth of remarks, and most of it was his usual spiel, the campaign speech that he gives in city after city. But something kind of cool happened at the end. Like the last 5 or 6 minutes of his speech, Kennedy went off script and he started ad-libbing. And I've watched probably every speech the guy has given over the years, certainly since his campaign began. And there's some really interesting things that he says here that I've never heard him say before. Some of it was new to me. And it's just absolutely passionate and interesting. So let's take a listen to the last 5 minutes of his speech here.
And that uncle is Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam is going to co-sign your mortgage. And if you default, Uncle Sam can resell the home like they did with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which is why they have a $110 billion surplus. Oh, in order to pay for those mortgages, to finance them, I'm going to issue a new issuance of Treasury bills at 3% interest, tax-free. So we will be able to finance all of those. The first $500,000 I'm going to give to teachers, because they are the most neglected. Teachers are the most important profession that we have in this country. And they are beleaguered, they're abused, and they're undervalued. And we need to make it so that they can live in the neighborhoods. These mortgages will only be available to people who live in that home and who work in that neighborhood. And I'm going to close with one other idea I want you to keep in mind. We're sending we're already committed $113 billion to Ukraine. And President Biden now wants another $24 billion. Now, just for comparison, the entire budget of the EPA is $12 billion a year. So that's all we've got for the environment in this country. That's it. So we're sending 12 times in 1 year to Ukraine what we spend on EPA. The entire budget for CDC is $12 billion. That's what we got for public health. And how can we afford to send 12 times that much to Ukraine. The month that we made the $113 billion commitment was March of 2022. And that month, we also spent $300 billion, twice what we're getting to Ukraine, to bail out the Silicon Valley Bank. So, and that same month, we cut food stamps to 30 million Americans from $283 a month to $23 a month. And we announced the cuts of 15 million Americans from the Medicare rolls. So, you know, like I said, they're doing this right in front of us. They got plenty of money for the military-industrial complex and plenty of money for the big banksters. But when it comes to working Americans, there is no money. We're broke. So that month, Mitch McConnell was asked, how in the world can we afford $113 billion to Ukraine? When, you know, we have crisis. There's 2 zip codes in Chicago. A recent study showed that the people in those zip codes have worse standards of living than people who live in the most war-torn neighborhoods of Afghanistan. We have a crisis right here in this country. And Mitch McConnell was asked by a reporter, can we really afford to send $113 billion to Ukraine? Here's what he said. He said, yes, because the money's not really going to Ukraine. The money is going to US military contractors, to General Dynamics, to Raytheon, to Boeing and Lockheed. These are American companies, so that money is really coming back here for the good of America. So, who do you think owns every one of those companies? Exactly. And you know, when we give the money to Ukraine, we call it a loan. Of course, how many people here believe that Ukraine is ever going to pay that back? Yeah, nobody. And nobody does. There's nobody in Washington who does. The same number of people in Washington believe they're going to pay it back. But what it does is it allows us to put the screws on Ukraine, and we signed a contract with them that compels Ukraine to do certain things. And one of those things is to sell most of its assets for cash, including its farmland. Now, Ukraine has the best farmland in the world. For 1,000 years, there have been wars fought over that farmland. It is the breadbasket of Europe. And people say about Ukraine, about the soil, that if you throw a boot, an old boot, on the ground in Ukraine, something that will grow from it that you can eat, because it's so rich and fertile. And everybody, for many, many centuries, has been trying to get their hands on it. Well, guess what? Now they're being forced to sell it. The small farmers are being forced to give up their land. The government is giving up its. They've already put on the auction block 28%. Who do you think the biggest buyer is of that land? Exactly. So, you know, why are we in this war? We know who's making the money from this war. They're doing it right in front of us, and what they do is, the strategy that allows them to get away with it is they keep us all at each other's throats. So they turn blacks against whites and Hispanics and Republicans against Democrats and rural people against urban people. And you know, when the rulers in the castle, the king and queen, look over the castle wall, the top, and see all of their subjects fighting, they go back to the dining room and they open champagne and they toast each other. Because as long as we're all fighting each other, we can't see what they're doing. And it's like somebody who's jangling keys over here and saying, look at these keys, look at the trans issue. We got to be tougher on trans. We got to be tougher on pregnant women. We got to be tougher on Mexico. All of these things that they're going to do. And then over here, they're robbing the bank. And nobody's watching them. And, but I have my eye on them. And when I get into that office, it's going to be, the payday is going to be over for BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And somebody just a moment ago shouted at me about the DNC. Well, you know, the DNC did the same thing they're doing to me. They did it to Bernie Sanders.
Worse.
Because Bernie Sanders posed a threat to the DNC's donor base. Well, I am 10 times the threat that Bernie Sanders was.
Better believe it.
And that's why they've raised, my understanding is $2 billion. And do you think they raised those in small donations? No. And no, they didn't. They raised it by somebody, you know, in the White House basement calling all the billionaires and getting the big money from them. And why did they hand it over? Do you think those billionaires and big corporations like Monsanto and Pfizer and BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, do you think they gave those big million-dollar donations to the Democratic Party out of a patriotic impulse? Or out of a humanitarian impulse? I don't think so. I think they think they're going to get something for that money. I think they don't look at that as a donation. I think they look at it as an investment. And I'm going to make sure that they do not get a good return on that investment. I want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you for your support. And I'll see you in
Man, oh man, I'll tell you what. That was a speech that was unusual for Kennedy. I have not seen passion like that from him ever, nor have I heard him deliver his words with such bluntness. And you can go ahead and cut the video. Thanks, Rick. So, I don't know if you guys, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. To me, that sounded like a man with nothing left to lose and nothing left to fear. Your thoughts? I think he's been to the mountaintop.
That's why they don't want him on television. Like that, they don't want him on television. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of speech that'll get a guy killed. He just said he's going to end the war, end the national security state, shut it down for BlackRock and all of these profiteers who are robbing us blind. And he's going to bring a new deal, a fair deal for the American people. We can't have that. They're not let him on TV.
That in this country since FDR,
Exactly.
It's like when Huey Long started talking like that, boom, he was killed. When JFK started doing that, boom, he was killed. When Martin Luther King was saying that, boom, he was killed. And RFK, his father, boom. So yes, and I think what you're hinting at is exactly what I was thinking too. It's like, yeah, if you think somebody's might have just missed shooting you, you're going to say things that you've been maybe holding back. And
that's what I was thinking. I'm like, just say it. Say it all.
Yeah,
say it now. You never know how much time you've got. And I think he was thinking the same thing.
There's
like, if this is the last speech I ever give, I'm going to tell the American people more truth than they've ever heard in recent memory, if not their whole lives. No, he did in those 5 minutes.
Yeah, this is why what the show you guys do is so valuable and important. And I'm not brown nosing. I'm serious, because there's so few people who tell those level of truths, and the mainstream media will never tell you that because their advertisers are all these.
They'll never play that speech, but we just did. No, we wanted everybody to see and hear what he said last night in Los Angeles. If that's the last speech he ever gives, that was the best speech he ever gave, and I've seen them all.
Oh, let's please let it not be his last speech. Let
I
there
hope
be
not.
many more. And I want to encourage people, because I'm a big believer, you can call it new agey or what, but I'm a big believer that what we think about, we bring about. And so I think it's very important that we visualize him happy in the White House, helping us, and not lying dead, in a big grave ceremony. Let's really try and focus on the positive, because the world is kind of in a death spiral right now. I mean, everywhere you look, there's problems. And I think it's important on those of us who can to try and uplift the rest of humanity, because people who are in fear make terrible decisions for their own welfare and our welfare. People who have hope, who feel a little joy now and then, a little comfort, a little love, they make better decisions. So it's my personal mission to try and spread a little joy and hope and love in the world. I try and do that on Twitter when I can. If there is a positive story, I try and share it. I don't want to be negative Nelly all the time, and that's easy to do in the research that we do. But I think we keep him alive when we keep people from too much fear.
Exactly. And that's why it's interesting that tonight's episode just happens to be episode 13. I call it Lucky 13. Yesterday, yes, it scared us all. It gave us all a moment of, but it ended well. And as you saw, that speech went beautifully, and the crowd loved him. And the evening could not have ended on a better note than that. And I feel it was a very lucky day. The luck of the Irish was with him. His guardian angels were with him, and his security team did a bang-up, crack job. They did a fantastic job, better than the Secret Service, which brings me to the question of
careful what you wish for, right?
Protection. See, yeah, I mean, Bobby is once again asking, renewing his plea to this administration to provide him Secret Service protection. The Secret Service and the Biden White House are dragging their feet for reasons that baffle me. Secretary Mayorkas and the Department of Homeland Security denied Kennedy's request a couple of months ago, even though he submitted and his security team gave them a 67-page document of threats that he's received against his life that they take seriously. They don't think these are just random trolls. They think they're quite serious.
Well, there was that guy who got like within steps of his bedroom the other day, and
got to the top floor of his house. Yeah.
If anybody ever deserved protection, it's this guy. And I saw it online today, right before your show. People are like, no one ever gets protection this early. That's not true.
That's not
Obama
true.
had protection this early. Yeah.
Ted
Obama
Kennedy had it.
death threats. Yep.
Ted Kennedy, when he challenged Jimmy Carter, and those two hated each other, right? They hated each other. And yet Carter granted him Secret Service protection a year before the election. And so, Jim, you had a story about President Carter that you were going to share with us. Would you tell me that story?
Well,
tell everybody.
Lisa's familiar with this story. It's one of the most bizarre stories you're ever going to hear about presidential, perhaps, assassinations. I think it was 78 or 79 that Carter came out to Los Angeles, and he was speaking at some big convention center. And the police picked up a guy who was acting suspicious at a hotel across the street. And then they picked up a guy that he said he knew, that was part of this. And the guy had a revolver. The guy up in the hotel had a revolver, and he had apparently practiced shooting. He delivered about 8 rounds. And he said this other guy that he named was a guy who told him to do this. The bizarre thing about this is that the guy up in the hotel room was named Osvaldo, and the guy down on the street was named Harvey.
Raymond
Lee Harvey.
No way.
Raymond Lee Harvey Osvaldo.
Yes, and if you put the two names together,
what are the odds?
And Raymond was the character from the Manchurian Candidate, who fired at a president, so it's like, and this is the story where Raymond Lee Harvey was firing blanks as a way to distract so that the actual shooters would get their shots off, just
Huh.
like what I argue happened in the pantry. And I didn't know that when I wrote
To his
my book. I
father,
found this
to Robert F.
after.
Kennedy Sr.
Yes.
That's your
Yes.
theory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if I had
Except it's
written,
not a
if I had
theory.
read that before, it would have been in my book. Yeah. It's like this again. These are templates. These are practice plots that work. Except this time they had a guy who decided he wanted to do a little. He wanted to see how loud the gun was going to be, and the blanks went off, and people looked because he was in the crowd, and they got him. Yeah. So.
And by the way,
Isn't it
again,
interesting?
that might sound too wild, but you can look it up. It's even on Wikipedia.
The New York Times.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Wikipedia, I don't use as a source for anything, but the New York Times did do a pretty decent story on that at one point because they tried to make that story go away immediately. And so
Right,
it's just
they
like
did.
this
They
weird
tried to make it
preaching.
disappear.
And then,
but it's still
then
around.
when it went to trial, they're like, there's more to this story. And then it disappeared forever. But
Well,
the New York Times did a really in-depth article about it first.
I know that we did an interview with you, Lisa, a couple months back on the 55th anniversary back in June. And, I always thought, and Bobby agrees, it's his theory as well, that the man who really shot and killed his father was not Sirhan, who he believes to be innocent, who was a mind-controlled patsy, a distractionary shooter, if you will, shooting up the pantry and acting crazy, so everyone paid attention to him, while the real shooter delivered the shot that hit Senator Kennedy less than 1 inch from his ear. And he believes that it was the security guard, that Thane Eugene Caesar, who died a couple of years ago. And you have a different theory, which we'll get to in a moment. But the first thing I thought of, Lisa, when I heard this news,
security
was I
guard.
thought,
in Los
okay,
Angeles.
it's a security, or it's a rent-a-cop guy who just got the job, and all I could think of was Thane Eugene Caesar. So anyway, I know that
Yeah,
you
the
don't
parallels
think
are amazing.
Thane did
Yeah.
it. You have a different theory. Can you explain it kind of briefly, what you think happened?
Sure, very briefly. Thane was literally at Kennedy's right elbow. He was pulling him through the pantry until he got about halfway, and then he stood there. Now, according to one witness, it looked like Thane was holding him in place there at that point when the shooting started. But there are three, if Thane's on this side, there are three shots under the back of Kennedy's armpit area, each at a steep upward angle and going across from back to front and from right to left. And the shot behind the ear, his arm would have been very exposed for that shot. But the shots under the arm, he could hide with his own body. It would have been super easy for Thane to have shot him. But he was a fairly big, tall guy. If he had pulled out his hand and shot Kennedy, a lot of people were already looking at both of them, and he would have been very exposed. There are two witnesses, one of whom was George Plimpton's wife, Freddie Plimpton, and the other guy, his name is Ray. I forget his last name. I met him on the set of Bobby. I was an extra in the film Bobby because I had done a little consulting with them about the ambassador and shared some maps and some stories with them, and they put me in the film. And this guy and the woman both saw a guy in a white busboy jacket go right up to Kennedy's head. And they both swore, well, Ray was certain it was Sirhan. I know for a fact it wasn't, because Sirhan was wearing blue all night and had a blue velour pullover that did not look in any way like a white busboy jacket. But there were lookalikes there. And so it's very possible that he saw the actual assassin who made the headshot. And Freddie said, I saw his hand right up. I was certain he had killed Kennedy, but I didn't see a gun. I don't know why I didn't see a gun. And of course, the CIA and presumably other agencies, they have a gun, a 22, that'll fit in the palm of your hand that you control with a ring on your finger. You can literally shoot somebody and no one will see a gun. The Navy had a weapon that went in a white glove. So if you're in a white busboy outfit, if you have gloves on or something, it was like a piston action. If you put your hand up, you could trigger it just by pressing against somebody's head. And then the CIA had a cigarette pack that was a gun. And it looks exactly, it's in the museum. You can go see it if you ever go to D.C.
In the International Spy Museum?
You hit a little secret button and boom, it fires. They also had camera guns, and I have personal experience with this. I didn't know at the time what the big deal was, but Gerald Ford drove right by my house. I used to live in Palo Alto, and Gerald Ford came to Palo Alto, went to Stanford that day, and I was all excited. Wow, president's driving by my house. I was 13. I had a little Kodak camera, and I put it up to my eye to take a picture. And suddenly a guy on a megaphone is like, put the camera down.
Put the camera down.
A SWAT guy
Drop the camera, little girl.
It starts running at me, and I'm like terrified. And so, of course,
Yikes.
they put the camera down. Well, it turned out that was the day before Sarah Jane Moore shot him. And they had already had threats that he might be shot at Stanford. And the CIA has camera guns. They can hide a gun in a camera. So imagine somebody pulling up a camera right next to Kennedy's head. No one would even know. It just looks like a camera. Gordon.
And when I hear stuff like that, I think, okay, Secret Service 99% of the time does a great job. But then there's that 1% of the time in Dallas where everything went wrong. Everything that could go wrong in Dallas did go wrong. But I have a question, and I wanted to see what both of you guys think. Do you think here in a week or two, they're going to go through this Adrian guy's house and going to find some diaries that say RFK must die? RFK must die.
Well, since he didn't
Sorry to
die,
joke about that.
I'm pretty sure they won't. I don't think there's going to be a very serious investigation. Sadly, and I'm not sad that he didn't die, but because he didn't die, sadly, there won't be a very serious investigation, I fear. Go ahead, Jim. Yeah, sorry.
You can't go to the well too often. Okay. All these guys, like, I'll never forget one night Truman Capote was on the Tonight Show. And he says, Johnny, I'm a literary guy. I write books. Okay, I've written several books. I've written a couple of bestsellers. Guess what? I don't keep a diary. But all these guys, this James Earl Ray guy, they all keep diaries.
Funny thing, that.
Yep.
That's not funny. They wrote down all their intentions in their little diaries, like Oswald and like Sirhan, supposedly.
Well, I think the equivalent of a diary is that little YouTube video. And again, if you've ever been on not YouTube, TikTok. I've been on TikTok, many times, and most people have literally hundreds of videos on their page. To have only one video in all that time feels like a plan, a setup for something that was going to happen later.
It sure does.
And this might have been it. Because, like I said, maybe this is
Lisa, let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Okay, at least for right now. All right.
We won't convict him yet. He hasn't even seen a judge for his arraignment.
Well, like I said, even if he,
but I have the same feeling you do.
To kill, he might have been a victim himself, like Sirhan was.
That's right.
A victim of mind control. So I don't know what happened. He apparently lied to his brother. That's a huge red flag. Beyond that, we have to wait and see the rest of the evidence. So, which I know you and I are going to be looking for very carefully.
With a fine-tooth comb, because that's what we do. We assassination researchers. We've been obsessed with this stuff all of our lives, and we go to primary sources. We don't just read stuff on the internet and think it's true. We're old school, we're so old. We remember the old, card files and the Dewey Decimal System, having to go find actual books and papers and microfilm and microfiche at the library before the internet. And we had to write a letter to the National Archives and request specific documents under a FOIA request, and then wait 6 months to a year to even get a letter back. And then you'd have to get you'd have to pay for photocopying to get big stacks of documents made for you, and then they would ship them to you snail mail. And I mean, we're old people. That's how we used to do it before everything was digitized and available online with the click.
Well, and not everything has been digitized, right?
Well, you can say that again.
Files that even
thank God for the JFK Act. Okay,
Yeah.
because that made a lot of documents
Digital.
appear out of nowhere. But the thing is, there's never been one for the RFK case, and there's never
True.
been one for the MLK case. So
right.
does Oliver Stone have to make a movie about the King case, and then, for there to be?
I was hoping he would.
Yeah.
I've wanted him to make a real movie about the RFK assassination, because the movie Bobby, it didn't even get into
please,
that.
I don't even want to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a serious picture.
And by the way, he said, Lisa, I'm sure you're aware of this. He said that, yes, I'm aware of Lisa Peace's research on the Bobby Kennedy case, but I didn't want to get Oliver stoned, okay, by going down that path, okay? So.
Said that. But he did thank me. I went to a school.
Yeah, he did.
He made me stand up and introduced me to the audience. And this woman knows the real story. And you should get her book, because I gave him a copy of it and he brought it. And I thought that was really cool. I have great love for Emilio because he's a good guy. Yeah.
And these days, I don't think Hollywood would allow such a movie to be made. And even when they made Bobby, what was that, like 2006, 2007, when that movie came out? Even then, Hollywood was so tightly controlled that they weren't going to really.
Oh, yeah. CIA doesn't ever
that
want
topic,
that to happen again. Yeah. After Oliver Stone's film came out, the CIA literally opened an office in Hollywood and staffed it. And all film requests now go through that office. And I took a film class at UCLA, and my instructor, when he found out I was into the Kennedy assassination, he goes, "Oh, remind me at lunch, I have a funny story." And I'm like, okay. So lunch came, we were in the elevator together. I'm like, "So what was that story?" He's like, "Oh, I gotta tell you." He said, "So I knew Oliver Stone, and Oliver Stone gave me that famous memo, Jim, that's the media memo, the instructions to media assets."
Yes. Right.
Oliver had given this guy that, and he said, "Show that to them before your meeting and it'll probably go better." Meaning they'll say, "But what about the media?" And it's his way of saying, "Well, look, they're all controlled by the CIA." What the guy didn't know, as he passed out the memo, ran to the bathroom and came back, and the room was stone cold silent, because the CIA author of that memo was at the vetting table to decide whether to document.
Hey, I wrote this thing.
This is a true story. Now, the funny thing was, it was a low-budget documentary, and he and his wife had done it, and they were blaming the FBI, and of course it got approved because they weren't blaming the CIA. And he said, so when they approved it, I thought, maybe we got it wrong.
I was speaking of the FBI. I was, how we assassination researchers kind of argue amongst ourselves. We do that a lot. I was arguing with someone the other night about J. Edgar Hoover, because so many people want to lump Hoover in with the CIA and say, he was in on it. I don't think Hoover was in on the planning of the assassination. I don't believe that. I mean, I'm no fan of J.
He wrote in the margins, those double-dealing CIA people lied to me about the Mexico.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
and I want people to understand that Hoover, despite his many failings, was an excellent cop. He'd been doing police work since the 1910s. He founded the FBI. He was the FBI. And the reason that we had such excellent forensics, and the reason that the FBI was so good at solving crimes, was J. Edgar Hoover and how he trained his men. And so Hoover, had the CIA not existed, had they not been there to hide things from the Warren Commission,
he tried to keep them from existing.
The FBI would have and could have, I believe, solved this case. I think Hoover had the gist of it within the first 24 hours. And, that the CIA had tons of blackmail on J. Edgar Hoover because of his own sexual life.
If you read the transcripts with Johnson, it's pretty clear that Hoover doesn't know what the heck is going on in Mexico City. All right? Right. He doesn't have no idea. He goes, well, now we have these pictures of this guy who the CIA says is Oswald, but he's not Oswald. Then we've got these tapes that the CIA sent up, and they say this is Oswald, but my agents say, no, this is not Oswald. We're talking to him right now. Okay?
Right, right. That's not his voice.
Later on, there was a guy who was stationed in Atlanta who was transferred to Dallas in the summer, I think, June of 1964, to work on the JFK case. And so the agents there took him down to this auditorium, and they watched his Zapruder film. Okay, so they're walking out, and the guy from Atlanta, who obviously doesn't know what the heck's going on, he says, well, apparently he was hit from 2 different directions. And the guys say to him, do you think we don't know that? That's not what Hoover and Colson want to hear. Okay, so we can't say it. Okay.
That's a great point, man. And
Yeah.
when most people would not go through the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission report, but if they did, I mean, we all know that some of the best research, some of the truth is buried in those 26 volumes, and most of those
Volume
are FBI.
26 to be exact.
Yeah.
By the way, Lisa actually had a set.
I literally that's why I turned around.
original?
I used to have a shelf of books behind me with my Warren Commission volumes on it. And I thought, because when I first started getting to it, I thought, if I were Alan Dulles, where would I hide the best information? I'm like, I'm going to start at the end and read
In plain
backwards. And
sight.
sure enough, that's where all the good stuff is. David.
By the way,
Hughes
that's
is
what
really-
she told me.
but
She
his
goes,
name is
Jim,
misspelled.
they
Yeah.
buried everything in 25 and 26.
That's
all this
right.
interesting stuff because they didn't think anybody would read that.
All the best stuff is at the end in the
Exactly.
last 2 volumes. That's true. And there's so much
Yeah,
truth in there.
so-
And of course, it completely
think like a criminal.
contradicts the summary, the Warren report. That's what Alan Dulles wanted you to believe, because he knew most people would never get past the first book. And so all the good stuff
Right.
is down there in 25 and 26. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's
Exactly.
exactly,
He actually
that's
said
exactly
that.
what Dulles said. Okay?
Yeah.
He said, let's publish it all. Nobody reads anymore. Like a few university professors will read it, maybe a couple lawyers, but that's all.
Guys like you,
Yep.
girls like you,
Yeah.
girls like me. Yeah, only a few nerds will actually bother to read it all,
Right.
and they won't figure it
Right.
out for another 50 years or 60
Yeah.
years. I mean, we're still figuring things out. We're still trying to pry documents out of the government. But most of the documents that are left that we're still trying to get are mostly CIA documents at this point. Isn't that right? I think most of the FBI
And some
documents are out there.
military. And some
military.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeff
That we know of.
Jeff Morley says that one of the documents they won't give up is this. Joanides was cleared for what the CIA calls SI, which is Special Intelligence, in the summer of 1963. They will not give up what that Special Intelligence was, And I go, well, Jeff, do you think it's about Mexico City? And Jeff said, Jim, if that's it, the game's over. Okay? If this is about Mexico City, game, set, match. All right? He says it might just be about the Fair Play for Cuba Committee.
I was thinking New Orleans.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But my thought, just for what it's worth, I was thinking more
Right.
New Orleans than Mexico
But
City.
now with what Biden has done to the JFK Act, I don't think we're ever going to know. But if you read Andrew Eiler's article at Kennedy's and King, Biden just took a flamethrower to the JFK Act. Okay, and
he says it's no longer in effect and doesn't apply.
You're exactly right. You're exactly
Just like that, it doesn't matter anymore.
He completely
Very
changed,
disturbing.
unilaterally. He changed the strictures in the JFK Act. It's not going to be released. It's only going to be released through a special channel at the National Archives, and the CIA and the FBI and the State Department are all going to be allowed to argue that no, you shouldn't release this. And that panel does not have the power to unlike the ARB, which did have the power to overrule the CIA. This does not have the power to overrule the CIA. Very, very interesting
The
story.
CIA runs this darn government.
We're
You better
getting a little,
believe it.
we're getting a
And
little
isn't
overtime.
it sinister,
But,
guys, that we're right back where we started before the JFK Records Act? If that's going to be the case, if the CIA gets to decide
If
which
they get final
documents we
say,
get,
we don't run
then
the
we're
government.
right. It's
Right.
almost like the JFK Records Act never happened. It's like we're right back to the Warren Commission, where the CIA is literally, gatekeeping which documents we can see. But all that will change on day one, on January 20th, 2025, if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. becomes our next president. So I know we're just about out of town.
Oh, okay.
When? I know we're just about out of time. And there was one last tidbit that I wanted to.
I'm going to interrupt just 1 second. And that's
go ahead.
Robert Kennedy himself, the father, had said the last day of his life, they asked him, like, why do you always say, like, when I'm president? You know, why don't you say if I'm president? He's like, you can't think like that. You just can't. You have to assume the positive, basically. So that's why I said the when. It was a tribute to RFK. So
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay.
Well, we were talking about the theater where all this happened last night, just down the road from the former site of the Ambassador. Of course, that was demolished, almost 2 decades ago, I guess. But the Wilshire has been there since 1927. And, it's a really interesting place. I know you've been there. I've been there. And
I live a couple blocks from
illustrious history. There are a couple of interesting things about the building's history. It's the last place that the public ever saw Amelia Earhart before she took her ill-fated flight in 1937. She made her last public appearance at the Wilshire Ebell Theatre. And also, and I found this a really kind of spooky coincidence, Judy Garland was discovered by an MGM talent scout by the name of Joseph Mankiewicz in the early 30s, back when she was still known as Frances Gum of the Gum Sisters. They performed vaudeville there at that theater, and that's where she was actually discovered and brought to MGM and made a big star. But Joseph Mankiewicz was the uncle of Robert Kennedy's press secretary, Frank Mankiewicz. Right. That's right. He was the great Joseph Mankiewicz, of course, Hollywood legend. Frank was his nephew. And for those of you who might not know who I'm talking about and why Frank Mankiewicz is important, most of you, I'm sure, will remember Frank Mankiewicz from this moment.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy
1968.
Died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968. With Senator Kennedy, at the time of his death, were his wife Ethel, his sisters Mrs. Stephen Smith, Mrs. Patricia Lawford, brother-in-law Mr. Stephen Smith, his sister-in-law Mrs. John F. Kennedy. He was 42 years old.
June 6th, 1968. Words that I hope we will never, ever hear again, and certainly not from any Kennedy press secretaries. I'm very relieved, as I'm sure you all are, that we didn't hear anything like that last night, and that it's all good news in the end. The man is captured. He is in custody. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon, and is probably going to be looking at a long time behind bars, especially if they charge him federally with impersonating a U.S. Marshal. That ought to put him away for a good long time. Question is, does he have conspirators out there who, might be coming back for more? I don't think he will, but this may be, is he a pro? Certainly one thing that we can think of. Oh, a probe.
Yeah,
I thought you said a probe.
Test of Kennedy's security to see.
Right.
I'm sure there's going to be different attacks to see where the weak spot is. And clearly getting on his team by volunteering and showing up isn't going to work. So that's good.
That's right.
But,
Gavin Becker, he doesn't, he's got a sharp eye. He knows everybody on his team. And this guy probably stood out like a sore thumb. He didn't have the right credentials on him. Those tattoos, I don't think Gavin's going to hire guys with tattoos like that. Just saying. So, there's so many questions that are yet to be answered. There's so much information. This is all preliminary. It was less than 24 hours ago. And of course, LAPD is still investigating. It's an ongoing investigation. This suspect was very quiet when he was being taken into custody yesterday. He wasn't like Oswald screaming, "I'm a patsy." He had absolutely nothing to say while he was being cuffed and taken away. Like Sirhan. And he had kind of we couldn't see his eyes because he had shades on, but I wish we could have seen his eyes because, Lisa, I wanted to see if he had a vacant
I had
stare,
the same thought.
if he was not quite
Or his
there in the
pupils
moment.
dilated. Yep, yep.
That's
I almost
so.
wanted
It's
to
interesting
find out
that he
who
had
the
shades
arresting
on.
Officers were. Yeah. When you called, if you're able to find out who the arresting officer is, you should try and talk to that person and ask what his impression of him was, especially before this is a big story. So
I would love to talk to
might
the
tell the
arresting
truth.
officer. So far, they're just keeping me stuck with the PIO, the public information officer. But boy, if I could track down one or more of the arresting officers, I couldn't read their names on their badges in the arresting video. I was trying really hard to blow up the video so I could get the officers' names and try to find them. But if you find out, I hope you'll let me know. Or maybe you can talk to him since you live there.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe you can look them up. So, Lisa, where can people look you up? Where can people find you and follow you and support you and buy your book?
I hang out on Twitter. That's usually the best place to find me, at Lisa Pease.
At Lisa
My book
Pease?
is everywhere. Any bookstore can get it for you. Please support your independent bookstores. But if you can't or don't have one near you, Amazon works. If you search my name, you will find my book. And you will find that Jim is listed as a co-author of my book. Even though
I'm listed as a co-author?
Yeah,
All I did was write the introduction. So it's 7 pages long. Okay.
Yeah.
You wrote the foreword, but now you've been graduated, promoted to
But,
co-author, man.
congrats on your great book, Jim.
You going to send him 50% of the money?
No.
No. That's an easy one. No. And the book is
Not
called...
after all those years.
The title
The
of
book
the
is
book?
called A Lie Too Big to Fail, The Real History of the Assassination of Robert F. Kennedy.
Love that title. Great title and so very true. And Jim, tell
Yes.
people where people can find you and follow
Well,
you.
it's right there. It's at kennedysandking.com. Okay, it's right below my name there. Okay, that's the website that I edit and publish. And my latest book is the accompanying volume to JFK Revisited, which has both screenplays, the long version and the short version, but it also has the excerpts from the interviews that didn't get into the movie.
That's the
And
best
we
part.
had a literal all-star cast, okay, including Lisa, okay, including Judge John Thunheim, Cyril
And Robert
Beck,
Kennedy Jr.
Robert
himself.
Kennedy Jr.
Yes.
Yes.
Jim called me the day after Robert Kennedy Jr. He was like, Lisa, the whole movie, we were all doing, we were like all in tears and stuff. Yeah. He got a little emotional.
Jim, I don't know if you can still hear me, but I wanted to
I
ask
can
you
hear
before we close, could you tell me, of course, we are coming up in less than 2 months on the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination, and there's going to be a lot of big events this year. What are you going to be up to this November? Can you tell me what you have going on?
I'll be speaking at the Cincinnati Mercantile Library. I believe that's on November the 14th. And then I'll be going to Pittsburgh on the 15th, 16th. That's going to be the big event.
That's going
to be, and
yeah.
Mr. Landis is actually going to be there.
Oh,
okay.
Really? And that's at
Among
the
the
Cyril
whole
Wecht
gallery.
conference, right?
Right. That's Cyril Wecht Conference at Duquesne. And you can go ahead and reserve your seat, okay, online for CAPA, C-A-P-A. But that's where I'll be speaking on the anniversary.
So you're not going to Dallas this time?
No,
at
not
all?
with take a look at the gallery of stars that they have at the CAPA conference this year. Okay, yeah, that's where I'll be.
Well, and if you go to Dallas, it seems like only the Q people are in Dallas these days. So you'll get accosted by
all the more
Q
reason
people.
to avoid it.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why I don't go to Dallas conference anymore. I'm very sorry to say. It's turned into a pretty unserious conference. So the real conference this year, yes, is the Duquesne one with the great Dr. Cyril Weck and the great Jim D'Eugenio, and so many eminent speakers will be there. So I will definitely be trying to watch that online.
I actually
register.
think you can. I actually think you can. Okay.
Good. So they will be live streaming it.
I think there'll be a Zoom, yeah.
Is that Lancer? Is Lancer involved in that? JFK Lancer?
No.
This is separate from that.
This is Kappa.
Yeah, this is Kappa.
Coalition organization.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to give you a teaser, my subject is going to be the death of JFK and the rise of the neocons.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jim, I hope if you can find time for us, I know this is the busy season of every year for you, but we would love to have you back on Maverick News around the anniversary this year and have another great long talk with you just about JFK. And this big 60th anniversary is so important.
Wait a minute. Fred Astaire without Ginger Rogers?
Okay. You're welcome to come too. You can join us.
And Lisa, I would like to have you back still to do that show about Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got to do that Howard Hughes episode. So we will do that. We will have you both back together separately or together.
Together is fine.
We love you guys, and thank you so much for on short notice joining us for this panel discussion tonight. Your insights, your wisdom, your knowledge is just invaluable, and our audience appreciates it, and so do we. So
thank you too so much, Lori and Rick. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks
to
a
you
lot,
too.
you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this week for Strange Bedfellows, this special report, episode 13. I hope you will like and share this video. Please get it out because you can't get two better experts than the ones that you saw here on this program tonight. And we will see you back here next Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for Strange Bedfellows. Good night, everybody.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes Strange Bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.